Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Catherine and this is Raspberry Reads. I'm doing my June reading wrap up for you. And June was Read Historical Fiction 2026. I didn't read only historical fiction in June, but I did finish 3 historical fiction works and I read 2 other works as well. So I'm very happy to share these with you today. Starting with the first book that I finished in June, and this was our book club pick for, I guess, late spring, early summer. And this was Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. This is contemporary fiction. It's set in the United States, in Washington, so that's the West Coast. And it's all about Marcellus, who is an octopus, and how he is an octopus that lives at an aquarium, a local aquarium, and he befriends a lady who's a cleaner of the aquarium. And so the book is told from the perspective of both the several characters actually. So there's the main woman who's the cleaner, whose name escapes me at the moment, and the octopus, and then there's another character. And although it's centered around Marcellus, he's sort of like this omnipotent narrator where he's imparting his wisdom about the cleaning lady and sort of her life and her relationships. It was really cleverly done, really charming. Not the best writing that I've ever come across. And actually, I tried watching the Netflix movie adaptation and just couldn't even get through it. So I would highly recommend reading the book over watching the film. Although I do love Sally Field, who plays the main character. But I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was quite sweet, heartwarming, and it is really about sort of family relationships, more so than an octopus. The first historical fiction book that I read in June was Where You Once Belonged by Kent Haruf. This came out quite a while ago, I think in the 90s. And I did enjoy this book. I gave it, I think, 4 stars. So this is about this one main character who's quite a sort of like icon of this small town, I believe in the 60s. I can't place the time period for this book. I'll try and pop it up on the screen if I can. But yeah, small town in the United States, some point in history, and this one character, I think his name might be Ed, but I can't remember, leaves abruptly from this small community, and that causes quite a lot of consternation, and then suddenly comes back, and the disaster that he leaves behind him is quite remarkable. And I really enjoyed this book. There were some really interesting characters. It's not just about that one character who disappears. It also follows his wife and another person who ends up being sort of connected to her, and just sort of the small town vibes in general. But yeah, it's definitely a mystery, I would say, and yeah, small town gossip, small town drama, importance of reputation in small communities. Really well written, and the reason why I liked this book in particular is that I found the ending quite powerful, punchy, and surprising. So I can very much recommend Where You Once Belonged to you. The third book I finished, or second historical fiction, is Company of Liars by Karen Maitland, and this is set during the time of the plague in England. So I think we're around, the 1300s? And it follows this group of people who are basically trying to travel around England and outrun the plague. And then it's about their relationship with each other, various people in the group, and how they all kind of came to be as a group. Very similar to A Little Trickery, actually, which I've spoken about before. But this book, I felt it dragged a bit. I listened to it as an audiobook. There's an aspect where this young girl ends up being part of the company, and she seems to be sort of like able to tell fortunes or has visions. And I think the whole premise is essentially that they're being hunted. This group is being chased by something, and that causes a lot of, you know, fear and concern amongst them. But it's not all as they perceive. Yeah, I didn't really get it. It wasn't my favorite. Sort of 3 stars, but that's being a low 3 stars, I would say. So I don't think I could recommend Company of Liars to you. Then the next book that I finished is The Foundling by Stacey Halls. This is also historical fiction. Stacey Halls is a very well-known historical fiction writer. And this is the second book that I've read by her, the first one being Familiars, which I did enjoy. And I really liked The Foundling. It's a long book, and it took me a while to get through. And I really was enjoying my reading experience with it. But I found the last third of the book to be incredibly tedious. The thing I liked about this book is the kind of build-up of, you've got Bess, who has to give away her infant daughter to a foundling hospital when she's a newborn, and then she goes back to try and claim her, and she's not there. And then there's this whole mystery about, you know, what happened to the daughter, can Bess get her back? But once the mystery starts falling into place, the last third of the book is kind of explaining like how that mystery came to be, and I just felt that it wasn't executed well, and like everything was sort of tied up neatly with a little bow, which I found quite irritating. So I would still recommend The Foundling. I really like Stacey Hall's writing. I find her writing accessible and engaging, and I will read more by her. I just felt that the ending let The Foundling down a little bit. But if you still like an atmospheric historical fiction, then I can recommend The Foundling to you. Sort of like solid 3 stars. And then the last book that I read in June, which I'm only just going to briefly touch on, is A Fire in the Sky by Sophie Jordan. I listened to this on audiobook. This is romantasy, and I did not like this book. It's basically starts out with a girl who is called a whipping girl, which is somebody who takes the corporal punishment on behalf of the royal children in a household. So you've got that premise, and then there's an aspect of forced marriage, and then it just gets weird. Essentially, I fell asleep or was starting to fall asleep listening to this book, and all of a sudden I was like, the main character just turned into a dragon. What is going on? And I'm sorry if that spoils it for you, but it's pretty obvious actually in retrospect from the cover of this book and the fact that it's part of a fantasy series. But it was so abrupt where I was like, oh right, she's a dragon now, and I was very confused. And then I just sort of lost interest from there. I don't have a problem reading about dragons, but I just did not enjoy this book at all, which was a bit of a disappointment. So anyways, those are the 5 books that I finished in June. 3 pretty good historical fiction reads. I've still got a few more historical fiction reads on the go that I started in June but didn't manage to finish, but I will speak about those in a different video, which will come out after this one. So I hope you managed to read a piece of historical fiction for Read Historical Fiction 2026, and if you did you enjoy it? Would you like to recommend it to myself or any of my viewers? If so, please put the suggestion in the comments down below. And I hope you've enjoyed some of my content for Read Historical Fiction 2026, and indeed have got some ideas of books that you can add to your TBR. So let's keep the momentum going for reading historical fiction throughout the year. And with that being said, I hope you're all doing well, and I will see you soon in a new video. Take care. Bye.